Sure.
and we'll
Yeah,
just
like,
rotate chairs.
yeah, just think of us as being like, that particular batch of students who just turned up for their first class on the subject,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to me and my team, because we never got the chance to, cover everything that the API team has been doing thus far.
sure.
This is
Okay.
really helpful, yeah.
API Course 101 with Professor Kathy.
Yep, you said it. Hi, Ben. Welcome. It's like Abdul is here. Jerry is here as well. Um,
Hey,
hello. Well,
Hey everyone.
hi, Adil. Um, I guess we can begin, Kathy. Looks like all.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. Well, so I didn't know exactly where you wanted to start, but I thought maybe we could take a couple of slides from the CPR discussion and start there. I know not everybody was on the CPR discussion, but I thought that might be a good place to start. And then if you guys have questions, we can go as deep in this as you like. All right?
Gotcha.
Cool. All right. Okay. All right. We can start right about here, I think would be a good place, just so that we have a good kickoff point for how you might spend some time with the API and get used to it. First of all, the strategy behind our integration deliveries is such that as we deliver an API, the API is just a tool, right? And the APIs are able to deliver both a push and a pull kind of scenario. So we are, in some of these cases, supporting bi-directional data transfer. So one of the first questions I think everybody asks is, what data goes and what data comes into CMP, all right? So as we start, I mean, we have an expectation that our library will grow beyond just the asset API. But the asset API is a really good model for this because it does support some bidirectional capabilities, and it gets us to a place where we can talk about integration in supporting these processes. So we have a process around digital asset management today. We have a process around resource management. We have a process around campaign management, all of those things, right? So the APIs are intended to do everything that the UI does, but from a back-end perspective as completely as possible. Does that make sense? You guys understand kind of generally why a public API is being asked for by our customers and our partners?
Yeah, I think I do, Kathy. I don't know if that's the consensus across all of us.
Yep.
Okay.
That did make sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Guys, any questions from our end?
no, I guess we're fine.
Okay. Great. Okay. So where we'll start with then is we have objects, right, in our platform. We intend to expose an API for every one of those objects, and then the relationships that extend from those objects. So starting with assets, here's an example of what the API can do just kind of by itself. And this is where we get to the whole bidirectional question, right? So anytime you see a get, this is the API 101 part, right? Anytime you see the get, that is an external system retrieving data. So that is data that is outbound from CMP. So an external system can request a list of assets, a list of articles, a list of images, a list of videos, and a list of raw files. Okay? So, and again, that's just retrieving information about that object, okay? This nomenclature right here means that I can also get assets that meet certain criteria or filter criteria. It's not our saved filters, but it is the capabilities that we offer with filtering. Like in the library, when we search, you know, we can search off of a label. We can put certain criteria in. You can also do that as an API or from an API. And that's what the filter stands for. This right here means I can get a list of articles, or I can get one article if I know its ID. So another term that we throw around a lot with the API is a GUID. You probably already know about GUIDs. Every object and every instance of our object in the platform has a GUID. So I can not only retrieve, say, a label group by a GUID, but I can also retrieve an asset's label assignment, the instance of that label being used. I can retrieve that by a GUID. So GUIDs are things that we use a lot in the API world. Okay, so this means I can retrieve a list of assets that meet a certain criteria, or an article by an ID. I can also retrieve an asset by an ID. Okay, so that's data that's outbound. Okay, so the next thing is data that's inbound, usually comes by way of a post or a patch. A post means create it new, and a patch means update it. So you'll see we don't have any patch support yet, but we do have a post support. This functions exactly as if I was uploading an asset to the library. It comes in when we upload this asset to the library. It comes in with an empty set of labels, an empty set of metadata. Eventually, we'll be able to post that asset with a list of labels as well. But right now, it's empty. Eventually, we'll be able to update labels from an external system. And when we do that, you'll see a patch assets. Make sense so far?
Yep.
Good. Okay. All right. So far, what we're going to be able to do now is not only send information to an external system like a DAM or a Showpad, not only send information about an asset and its metadata, but also allow any system to post or upload a new asset to our library. So right away, just with just a few operations, we have a pretty powerful scenario right there. Okay, so the other thing that's unique about the way that we're going to be delivering APIs is that we'll also be delivering anything that we need to support near real-time integration for the operations that we're supporting. Those are called webhooks. So webhook is basically a trigger. It's an event that we put a label on in CMP that then broadcasts to anybody who wants to listen, any external system that wants to listen, that this very important trigger was fired, this very important event happened. So right now we have a very limited library of this, but we still have, it's a growing library of events that we would broadcast to other systems to say, hey, an asset has been added. You might want to know about it. Here it is. Here's the information about it. An asset has been removed. You might want to know about it. Here it is. And so that's what webhook triggers do. So we have, these two are supported just as you would expect. An asset is added to the library, an asset is deleted or removed from the library. This one here is a little bit different because it's not set up fully to support versioning yet. It really only fires whenever an asset's labels have been modified. So eventually asset modified will be expanded to include a wide range of modifications to an asset, but right now it's limited to labels. So now, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Quick question. So
Sure.
whenever, for any of those three categories, whenever the trigger functions, whenever it comes into play, where does the user get the updates from? Like, do we have a separate channel, like an incoming webhook where we receive those updates?
Yep. So I'm going to show you how to do that next.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a very good question. Our end users don't know anything about this. It's only going to be our developer audience.
Oh.
Right. Okay, so the last thing that we support goes along with the idea that if every time a user's labels have been modified, or sorry, an asset's labels have been modified, if we're going to fire a webhook for that and broadcast information about that label being changed, we also need to support the object labels, right? So labels, is basically a term that we use internally for a tag. It's the sum total of a lot of our metadata that we send around to an external system. So we need to be able to tell an external system a little bit more about labels. So this is why we now support an endpoint for labels, and it's bundled here with the Asset API. So what I have now is everything that I need to do to trigger an external system to be aware of an asset being added, an asset being deleted, and an asset's metadata being modified. At the same time, I also have everything that I need to do to allow an external system to say, hey, we have this new asset that we want to add to the NewsCred library. Here it is. That's a full-on DAM synchronization use case. And it's now with the combination of the webhooks and the get options here, it's now as close to real time as any external system wants to listen for those events. A little bit different than, say, a feed, where it's near real time as long as the external system wants to parse through the feed. They'll now get individual events on every type of asset. So we now have kind of like this interesting question that customers face. Do I want to integrate via feed, or do I want to integrate via API? The biggest thing to wrestle there is the consuming system needs to have a way to do that. In an API context, we usually call that middleware. And in a feed situation, we usually call that some sort of ingestion procedure, right? And the technologies are just a little bit different. The process is a little bit different. But our intention as we release the APIs is to provide as much feature functionality in the API as we provide in the feed. And then once we meet parity with the feed, we'll extend additional capability from the UX. So everything you can do in the UI, you should be able to do in the API. Does that make sense from a really high level?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And Kathy, question on that. On the topic of achieving parity with the feed,
Yep.
Within the feed itself today, we can pass through custom fields. I know that
Yes.
we've already covered labels, but I do see a use case for custom fields for some clients. Maybe there's a unique IT code or job code for healthcare clients which they want to send over. Will we be able to support custom fields eventually?
Eventually, yes. So custom fields are tricky because they're actually associated to the task object. So when we have better support for tasks, we will have better support for custom fields for assets.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Kathy, this is Adnan.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One is actually a clarification. So you're saying that an user can actually upload assets from an external source, right? So
Right.
when they upload this, will that asset get directly uploaded into the CMP, or will it make copy in the CMP?
Okay, so the way that the post actually works is that it has to go to a space in AWS temporarily held until it actually gets physically moved and updated in CMP. So the end result is, yes, it's ultimately uploaded directly to CMP. There's no copy made of it. The copy does go away after it's like a temporary holding area where it needs to go. So they'll upload it somewhere. They'll get a key, and then based on that key and the validation of that key on the next request, they'll be able to physically move it into CMP.
Okay, and the end user will not face these two steps that you have mentioned, like it would be uploaded.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. For them, it's just gonna be, it's just gonna look like that the asset has been uploaded into the CMP from a
Yep.
remote server, and it would be all in real time. Like they have uploaded it in the their server, and if they have CMP open on another window, they will see it in the CMP at the same time as soon as the upload ends, right?
That's correct, as long as that is how the external system has written it. So in this particular case, we're just providing the endpoint. We're dependent upon somebody to actually write a bit of code from their external system to do that post. And right now we don't have anybody to do that. What we do have is our automation team actually using the post API, the post request here, to automate the migration of assets from an external system.
Okay. Another question that I have is, I don't see time get post or post for time. So is that not included? Like a client won't
Right.
see when the asset was uploaded or deleted. This information is not going to be there at this moment.
Let's take a look at what you do get to see.
Okay.
Yeah, you do actually get to see some of that data, but you won't be able to filter off of it yet. So there's no filter capability yet for you to take, say, a time range and say, give me all the assets that were uploaded between this time and this time, or modified between this time and this time. That's actually capability in our baseline library that was just added this last month. So we'll be adding it to the API as quickly as we can prioritize it.
Thank you. No more questions about this. Thank you.
Okay. All right. What you're looking at here is something we call Martin's Dashboard. It is our demo app, if you will. So when we're talking with customers, and this, by the way, you guys, will give you all instructions on how you can access Martin's Dashboard so that you can do the same kind of thing and do your own testing and explore this some more. But this represents middleware. So when a customer sits down and says, I want to use the API to integrate two systems, the first thing they have to do is somehow write some middleware. They have to write their own client application to consume the API. So that's what this is here, is our version of middleware that we can demo to developers and other customers and partners and so forth, just to kind of explain how the API operations work. So the first thing is that you'll see there's some app info here about credentials and tokens. Okay, this information here, all this token and client secret and all this good stuff, this is actually information that every client has to have in order to register their application to connect to NewsCred. That is all part of, let me move this out of the way. That is all part of this area that we just recently added called apps and webhooks to the settings page. So the very first thing that a customer has to do is register their application so that when they actually make their connection, they get all of this security token stuff. This is what makes it possible for them to connect in the back end. All right. So if you need to, we can spend some time on this, but this is all very industry standard kind of connection process, where I, as a developer, come in and I name my application. I get, we generate a client ID for them. They copy that client ID into their application, and it sits right here, client ID and client secret. The way that we've set this up is that every app that is going to connect in any instance has its own client ID and secret. So if I'm integrating Jira and I'm integrating Widen, for instance, two applications, they will each have their own client ID and client secret for each type of authentication that they need. So they might have, say, just one generic user that connects to do the integration, or they might have 4 or 5. We support both of those types of scenarios. So that kind of gets into architecture and authentication and all kinds of crazy stuff that we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on here. But I wanted to let you know, first and foremost, that we are compliant with all of the industry standards when it comes to the authentication. Make
Kathy,
sense?
quick,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe quick question on this. So Martin's dashboard, is
Yep.
this? I'm trying to think about the technical consulting team. Is
Yeah.
this something that they would be working out of? Is this the same as Trey? Like I'm trying to figure out
Right.
how this dashboard, this view, comes into play.
Sure. This is something you would use to test and just to test to make sure that you're getting a good response from an instance.
Mhm.
It's actually more of it's just a demo tool, maybe a testing tool, and it's only connected to Martin's Test Group 4. So we don't have the ability right now to like connect it up to different, different instances. But if, for instance, you were examining, like if somebody at a client site had sent you a payload from their API and they said, look, I connected, I was able to get this asset. This is the information I got, and I don't see the download URL. I don't see the download URL. What's going on, right? And if they were to send you their response that they got, you would be able to compare that to, say, a request for a similar type of asset, let's say an image. You could come here to image and you could say, okay, well, let me search for an image, and I could get a response and you could compare it. So basic troubleshooting, that kind of thing. And then just to be able to sit with a developer and explain, okay, this is what you're seeing. And in your code, you're going to need to kind of architect this type of an exchange because we're expecting this type of response. So it's really more of a demo training tool.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so let me show you how this works. Basically, any of our exposed endpoints are listed here, okay? So, and then anything that would be sent by an external system, like through the URL, is a field here. Anything that's a response from CMP is going to be in this area down here below. So the first thing I have here, let's see. Let's just go with assets. So starting from the very, very top of the asset API, one of the things that you can do is just get a full list of assets. But you do have to tell it, do I want articles, images, videos, raw files, or all? So what I'm going to do is just select articles. This page size right here, page size is how many articles do you want to retrieve at any one time. So I'm just going to leave it at 10. The offset is if I'm making a request and I don't care about the first 10 records because I've already seen the first 10 records, I would put an offset of 10. If I don't care about the first 100, the same as the feed, right? If I don't care about the first 100, I would put 100 in here. This is going to give me all articles 10 at a time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit go so you can see it. It's generated this API request. So basically an external system, as they're writing their middleware, this is all they have to do to formulate a request to get a list of 10 articles. 10 at a time, sorry. A list of all articles 10 at a time. All right. So this is a way, like you were asking Adil, how do I use this tool? You can actually use this tool to make sure that a developer is writing a valid request. You could say, hey, does your request look like this? Did you choose page size with an underscore or page size with a dash? Right? So you could kind of help troubleshoot. Okay, so this is what, yeah.
Quick question on this. Are we looking to expand the functionality of this dashboard so it would be hooked up to sandbox environments? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we didn't know when we started this how much we were actually going to use it. But yeah, we add a little bit to it every sprint.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so here we go. So here's a list of the first 10 articles. And then I just kind of want you to see, if you're not familiar with JSON, right, you can actually just kind of use basic JSON features right here in this list here, so that it makes it a little bit easier for you to look around. But here's a way. Here's just generally the first response for get an article, right? Get me an article is just as a part of an asset group. It's just this basic information. Here's its GUID, here's the title, here's the type, here's the created at, here's the modified. There's file location file location is folder location in the library. And then here's the content. Content is actually sent to you as a full block of HTML content. And then if there were any labels, they would be listed here. And then here's actually a link to the article itself. So that's one response, one return on an article get asset response. Okay, so what's nice about this interface is it actually sends me to the next thing, which is I can actually now, and I want to take you back here so you can see these objects. So that was a get asset, right? So here is assets, just assets, right? If there's anything special about articles by themselves, it's going to be here in articles. In other words, whether this was an image or whether or not this was a raw file, get asset would always return the same list, and then this changes. But there's data that we need that's very specific to each object. That's a separate type of request. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this GUID like that. And I know it's an article, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to copy that or paste that GUID. And now I'm going to do exactly what a developer would have had to do in his code, right? Or her code, sorry. He would actually have to send two requests. First, get the asset and give me the GUID. And secondly, go back and tell me specifically about this article what's unique. So check it out. Here is the generated URL, and here's the GUID. Now, if the developer already has the GUID, we're set, right? But the get asset helps them retrieve the URL, helps them retrieve the GUID. So here's what's unique about an article. You get some of the same information, but now this article body is called HTML body to specifically denote that the article is an HTML body. Okay, so now what we've been able to do is actually teach a developer the two types of requests they're going to have to do to obtain article information. Get assets gives me a GUID, and get article with a GUID gives me the information about that one article. All this is in the documentation, by the way. It's just, it's just kind of helpful to kind of walk through it one piece at a time. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Kathy.
Yeah.
Would this kind of work with any of our other integration in conjunction? And let me elaborate on that.
Sure.
With some of the website integrations that we have, we don't have a straightforward way to send, for example, PDFs if there's white papers that they're sending out to their hub. Does this asset API work together with any website integration we might have?
It should. Yeah, it should. The challenge, of course, is going to be, is it coming, the challenge we've had so far anyway, right, is that the links themselves for that content is relative URL. So if I package up, here, let's just take a look. Let's try it, okay? Let's go with the first 10 raw files, and you'll probably see a couple of PDFs in here. Here is a Getty Images, EPS, raw file. Here's a PDF. Okay. So again, this is an asset response, just a general asset response, right? I see the content is actually located here. So I can actually get to it directly from here. Let's go and look at specifically about that PDF. What do we know? The file location is in the Xerox folder. So, I mean, I think at this point, so now what you see here specific to this raw file is MIME type is PDF, created, modified. It has a file size here, so you know how big it is. that kind of thing. And then you know how to directly access it. If you were to, I mean, if you were to just kind of like pull apart the requirements of the ask here, if the ask is to send a PDF to what, like a content management system or to a content hub, is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Because we certainly have clients who have the same use case about having the ability to send PDFs through the site. And we've done that through custom fields where they'll upload the file to the library first, get the CMP library URL, put that in a custom field, and we'll send that as a part of the integration.
Right. So you have enough with the Asset API, and I would imagine you'd have enough with the feed to do this as well. But you have enough to actually compose a page that would provide a link and a title and a file type for a preview, that kind of thing. You have enough here to gain access to the relative URL, but it's still going to be a relative URL, right? We're not going to move that file anywhere, make it available through any other host. Okay. So generally, I feel like we do have enough information to do that, but we haven't done it yet. So, you know, there might be some hiccups here and there. Okay, so that's the general pattern for the way that the Asset API itself works. I want to show you one other thing here, because this is another pattern. Another pattern or a way to do this is to filter off of labels. Okay, I'm going to just, let me really quickly, let's look for images. I want to just show you a label block. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here's an image, the JPEG image, and it has labels. All right, so labels actually come to you in these, in kind of a different way. And remember I was telling you about GUIDs and how important GUIDs are. Okay, so here's a GUID that is actually associated to the label group article length. Here is a GUID that's actually associated to the value short. So an article length of short is actually this GUID here, right? Okay, so the labels that are actually assigned to this image is this group ID, B to C, and these two values. Sorry, so this whole thing works this way. So there are two labels on this image. It's an article length and it's B to C. It's assigned short and long for article length, and it's assigned business 3 and business 4 on B to C. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to actually do an asset query with the label. I want to see all the assets that actually have an article length of short. So the way I do that, and I'm going to just put it in the UX here so that you can see it, and then you'll see the way that the URL generates. Okay, so for the group, let's go with an article length here. We're going to copy that ID equal to short here. Okay, so the reason we do it this way and we don't make it in plain, the reason we don't set up filters in plain text is because it's very easy for it to get changed, right? It's very easy for somebody to go into the UI and change this from short to small, right? When you change something from short to small, the GUID stays exactly the same, but the text changes. So it's really important for an external system to know and track GUIDs for valid labels, otherwise they won't know how to interpret them always. So this is like a future-proof, fail-safe way to do it. So if I hit go on this, I now have a new URL, and it looks kind of ugly, but now you know how it's being composed. The group is set to this and the value of short, so article length short. Okay, so now what I have is a list of all of the assets that have, or sorry, in this case, it's all images where article length is set to short, which is kind of silly, isn't it? Looks like it's only one. Good. That actually looks like a really good query for a cleanup. Because why would I have an image with an article link to sort?
uh, Kathy, if you
Yes.
add in another label here, is that possible? And if so, does
Yes.
that flow an and logic or really or
It does an and.
and?
Yeah,
Okay.
it works exactly like our filters do in the UI. Whenever you add additional labels, they get appended on with an and.
Our filters are or, I believe.
We
For the most.
just changed them.
Oh, really?
Yes, we totally did. Yeah, they used to be ors, and that was counterintuitive, right, to filters. So we
Yeah.
just went back and changed them last quarter.
Oh, wow. Okay, maybe I haven't noticed it. I will test that again.
Yeah.
The more you
Yeah,
know.
it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are a couple of really key patterns that I think you guys will want to know when working with the API. The first is just generally, how is a URL composed? What are the options? And, how are they syntactically formed? And then secondly, it's just the pattern of retrieving general asset information versus retrieving specific asset information or information and data about the asset type that goes along with it. Any questions so far about what we covered?
Hey Kathy, this is Onyx. So the page size here is 10. So what I'm not
Yep.
understanding is, shouldn't it show the of 10 images of which has the group, which has the article length group and short and long values? So that's where I'm getting a bit confused. So I thought it will show 10 images here, list of 10 images, but does it showing one image which has article length short and long among this 10? So I'm just a bit
Right. It should show us if there were 10, and it would be the same thing as coming here to the filter or to the library, sorry, and putting a filter together. I don't know what my filter is here. It would be, I want all images where the article length is set to short.
right,
And see, I only get one image.
right.
So in my response here on the dashboard, I only got one image as well. So even though I set the page size to 10, there was only one response.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so really quickly, what I wanted to do is to also just show you, and again, we can send you all the information on how to set up your bookmarks and stuff to pull this in. This is super helpful. There's a pattern that we also follow with the webhooks. So what you're looking at here is webhooks that have been firing on Martin's Test Group 4 whenever an asset is added or deleted or modified. Remember the 3 that we talked about? And the reason this is important is because the second kind of pattern that we deliver with our webhooks is this here, where, and this is a way for us to kind of diagram and see how this event has been registered and how an external system would consume it. So an event fired, that event was called asset added. It was against this ID, this GUID, which happens to be an article. And here's a link to the article itself. So this article was just added, and now what I can do, I'm sorry, what I meant to say was, in order for us to retrieve information about that article, this is the URL I would hit, okay? So what I can do is I can go back here into Martin's Test Group. I'll go to Assets, or Articles. I'll put in that GUID. And here was the article that was just added. Created today, looks like, or was it 8/19? Yes, yesterday? With cupcake something, brownie something. All right, so here's the information about that article that was just created. And here is the event that fired when it was created. So a consuming system would basically wait for this event to be sent to them. Once it's sent to them, it would wake up and it would know to hit this URL, which would return to them this data. You follow? That's what makes it real time. That's what makes it possible for, like, imagine all of these events and a consumer listening, waiting to be woken up and told, hey, this article was added, what do you want to do? This article was deleted, what do you want to do? I can just thumb through these and you can see here's another added, here's a modified. This asset was modified, it was an image, and I can now retrieve the information about that image. So does anybody have a guess on what the external system would have to do in this case? Any guesses? I'm going to retrieve the information about that asset. It happened to be an image. So here's the image. Look at that. It was modified on 8/18. I don't have any other information about what the modification was, do I? I know it was modified. I know it was modified on the 20th at that time. The only way for me to really tell is to compare. This is everything that we know about this image right now. So the external system is going to have to compare everything that they know about that image and determine the update from there. Make sense? Not that much different.
Is there any way for us to see in this system, like what that comparison change looks like, or no?
No.
Once it's modified.
No. Yeah, not yet. The only thing we really have, and we're working on this. This is some of the feedback that we're getting, but the only thing that we really have is the fact that the only thing we support is a label change. The only thing that makes that fire right now, the only thing that would make this event fire right now is a change in the label on an asset.
Got it. So if a like asset had changed dimensions, for example, this wouldn't fire.
Exactly, right. If a version had changed on a document, it wouldn't fire.
So does that mean that the change in the dimensions also wouldn't get ingested on the client side or whatever system they're ingesting this in?
Not necessarily. It's just that it would only fire if the label had changed and the
dimensions. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're working on making that just a little bit better, especially because version support is going to require us to be pretty thorough about all the different types of changes that need to be supported there.
So are we planning on rolling this out to clients directly before that change is made? I can just foresee people who implement this integration wondering why a change wouldn't get ingested if they had made it.
Yeah, we're already rolling it out to customers now, but our coverage when it comes to that is so low. So our use cases that we have right now are essentially almost exclusive just a get. They're just retrieving the information. They're not actually looking for any full synchronization yet. The sales enablement case, exactly the same thing. They're happy with just an asset being uploaded every time there is a change. So they're happy to just get the new asset every time it changes, regardless, right? So what they're doing right now is anytime they get an asset modified, they're just kind of ignoring it, and instead they're going and polling, every 30 minutes, that kind of thing, so that they always get the latest.
I see, got it. So they're circumventing that shortfall by running a cron job.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we know we're not going to be able to get too much further, too many more use cases without coverage, and the version support is where we're going to do that.
Cool, makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so with 15 minutes left, I know we spent a lot of deep dive on the asset API, but I know you're also interested in what's coming. A lot of the patterns that you see that we've implemented so far in the asset API, we're also going to implement in the work management API, which is the next one that's coming. So as of right now, this is the only thing you're able to do with the work management API is retrieve a task, the task data that comes from a GUID. So the only way it works right now just so that you can see this. I'm just going to pick any task. If you go up here and you grab the GUID, what you'll see is what we've exposed right now is the endpoint for tasks. So this is a GET request on a task, and we retrieve basically the title of the task and the labels. And that's it. As what's coming next is the steps associated to that task. So we'll have task and steps returned.
Will the content also get returned here, or do you have to use both APIs in conjunction to make that happen?
You do have to use both APIs to make that work, and yes, it will, but I'm just not sure yet if it's going to be a separate endpoint where you'll have to get attachments. In other words, you'll have to use these endpoints to grab the GUIDs for any individual step, and then the attachments for the step, or the attachments for the task. So that's still yet to be determined.
Okay, got it.
So, sorry, I guess I misspoke here. This they just added this now. So I have my task, and I scroll down here, after all the labels, I have my steps. So that's kind of cool. So here's the title of the step, and then whether or not the step is completed, and then if there are any sub-steps to that step, and the title, and if it's completed. This is all in preparation for us to be able to support Jira, and Viva is our first kind of goal here, but an external system that's interested to know about our steps so that we can then defer that step to that system. So this is common in creative teams where they might take one of the steps in our workflow and have a Jira team complete it. Well, we want that Jira task to be reported back to us. So this is all in preparation for that work.
So that's why you have assigned an individual ID to each step, right?
That's right.
Okay, got it. So when do you start collecting data for a task after it gets published? I believe it's when you create a task, then all this information starts to populate.
Right. When the task is created, it starts to get populated, and then when it's started, you'll get updates here where if the step is started or is completed.
Okay, understand. So the assignees of the steps are not included in this information, right?
So they're not yet, but they will be.
So then you will also be able to modify these steps from using this API. Is this down the line? Is this what you're thinking?
Down the line, yes. So the MVP is for us to only to be able to update the status and to update the comments. So that as you comment on any particular step, that comment could be shared with an external system, or the external system could send comments to collaborate with the NewsCred user in line. So initially, those are the only two updates to the task step that we're going to allow. But
Okay.
as Adil knows, we're working on several more where we'll actually be able to update the due date. We'll be able to update the custom fields. And I think that's it.
Okay, so like after like 2 or 3 years, our clients don't even have to purchase the CMP.
No, I mean, we're trying to keep, to your point, every time we make a decision about this API, that is a top priority. We're trying to support specific processes, but we're always reinforcing the role of CMP. So that's why you won't find a lot of post operations back to CMP. Labels, for instance, we really want labels to be governed by workflow in CMP. So we might share labels, but updating labels is something we're going to treat very, very carefully, just like updating steps.
Okay, so I have a really beginner level of question now. So our clients need to build something that is like the Martin's dashboard in order to work with our API. Is that correct?
That is correct, but that leads me to what I want to leave you with.
Okay.
Go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, so unless they have something like this, they won't be able to query from an external source. So this is something that they will need, but since we have already created this and everything, will we provide this to them too?
Got it. Right. Okay, so yeah, customers usually want one of three things, right? They usually want a native integration. That's the easiest thing, right? That is when we have plugins on each system that are aware of each system's unique language, and they can talk to each other and exchange data based on a contract, right? That is what we offer today with Facebook. It's what we offer today with Marketo. A lot of our out-of-the-box native integrations that we offer today are based on that model. Second thing that customers usually want is some way to build their own thing, right? Maybe they have expertise on staff, or they have a big staff, or maybe they have complicated integrations, complicated business logic. So they just want to build it themselves. And that's what the API allows them to do. But they still have to build it if they want to connect two systems. So the other thing that they usually want is some way to make it all work, seamlessly. And they want low code or no code ability to do that. And that's what iPaaS offers us. So we're working on this. We have a couple of beta projects underway right now. We're currently learning as much as we can about a provider that we decided to go with called Tray. And Tray.io is the name of the company. And they actually offer connections out of the box for hundreds and hundreds of applications out there in our space. Things like Eloqua and Tableau and Dynamics and Wrike and Jira and all kinds of different applications. They offer the connections. All we have to do is connect our API to those connections, and then our customers can have a codeless integration. So hopefully what you're seeing there is we see all three barriers, we see all three options that customers want when they want to integrate applications, right? We can offer at least the first two right now, and we're in the process of being able to offer the third, creating just pretty much no barrier to what a customer would want to do as they, come to us with their integration challenges.
Okay, I get it. So you guys have actually literally enhanced the ability of the CMP. I mean, now CMP can do more. Like you can
Yes.
Integrate your system to the CMP, and you will understand the difference. Yeah, that's amazing. Great job on it.
Yeah, this will make it possible so that, so the APIs themselves are a predecessor to all of this. We couldn't play well in any ecosystem if we didn't have the APIs. So today our progress is just kind of bound by whatever we're able to make available in these endpoints. So you'll see us gradually expand into each one of those use case areas around sales enablement, around work management, around, et cetera, as each API gets delivered. But what this allows us to do is now what you see with each one of these verticals opening up, as soon as we release an API, all of these connections become available. All of these use cases within all of these systems become available. And we're part of a community where other partners are contributing their automations. So say there's a very specific automation that somebody's built that takes something that happens in their dam and notifies Slack and then updates, something out on Facebook, right? A very specific automation that meets a need. That actually gets contributed to a community, and now our customers can consume it. So we can contribute our solutions, other customers can contribute theirs, and it's just all part of this growing community of automations. And so suddenly all of these things become available to us and to our customers just on day one, like as soon as they sign up. So that's where we're going.
Yeah, understand. Thank you so much for explaining.
Sure. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else I can show you or we can chat through? Any questions?
Kathy, Rubai here. I had a question. So while you were presenting, that link that you accessed, requestbin.com or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that page where all the updates were showing up, does it have like some sort of a time frame restriction as to how many number of updates in related to the dates will be showing up in there for users?
Does it does requestbin have any, this pipe dream? I mean, so our webhook doesn't have any time limits. So this could also be viewed in something like Postman too. So each one of these little tools that you can use to troubleshoot and pull up responses, they all have their own interface with it. I don't see anything here that has any sort of restriction.
Oh, okay,
I
gotcha.
don't see a time limit here. Yeah.
All right. We used to actually use Advanced REST Client and Postman back in the day when like we used to get publishing failure alerts, and we used to have a separate endpoint to republish those failed distributions. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, that was like way back in the day when we didn't have the support dashboard to fall back on. But yeah, so like we never got the chance to practice that hard on that regard. But yeah.
Gotcha.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, at some point we may need to have, some tracks and some time for you guys to spend with, if we're expecting anyone to support the API,
Yep.
You might have to build something with the API. It would probably be good practice.
Great. Yeah. I will definitely like reach out and follow up with you because we actually don't have like any sort of specified documentation when it comes to the API team's development. So at least like if we could get like, the preliminary drafts or copies ready, we can then like move on from there to,
Sure.
like extrapolate and acquire all the right information for different users. Yep.
Yeah, that's something I'm hoping we can talk at length about, because the developer is a different audience. And so even though we've got quite a bit of material for the developer, driving that audience through our support docs to, the doc set that's set aside just for developers is
Agree. Yeah.
new for us, right?
Yeah, the viewpoint is different, right? So we need to cater to our audience and come up with like documents because that's easy to understand and make sense to them from a logistical standpoint.
Yeah.
I will definitely get in touch with you and keep you posted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Guys, any questions? I guess we are good. We can probably.
No, this was awesome. Super useful for the team and myself as well. We'll look forward to the recording after this as well. Yeah, thank you, Kathy, for this.
All right, and then I'll send out some instructions for you to download Martin's dashboard.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining today's call. I will pass on the recording once it has been processed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Kathy.
You betcha.